Happy Friday and welcome to Rising. We're so excited to be guest hosting. We ran Robbie and Bree out of town. But Inez, I wanted to hear how it was on the train coming in from New York City. Did you survive the rat czar or did the rats get to you?
We were talking about this before we started, but I think DC needs a cockroach czar, and obviously New York has the rat czar. The train was lovely. Nice morning light. I'm ready to get to today's show. So
I think DC needs a mini rat czar. I don't know, a rat prince or something, because there are some rats here. You know, they're not quite, as you stated, of the size of a New York rat, but they are present.
We definitely have those rodents of unusual size. There's a reference for the older millennial crowd up in New York.
So what else is going on in the world besides rats in New York City?
The Pentagon leaker has been identified and arrested. 21-year-old National Air Guardsman Jack Teixeira will face a Massachusetts court today for sharing secret U.S. intelligence on the social app Discord, primarily used among gamers. He's expected to face charges for violating the Espionage Act, according to The Times. The suspect's gaming friends say the classified documents were shared to show them what war really is. Here's what Attorney General Merrick Garland had to say on the matter.
Today, the Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard. FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident.
The breach in intel has sparked concerns over how a lower-level guardsman had access to sensitive material and the fact that the documents were out there for weeks. U.S. intelligence agencies may actually change how they monitor social media and chat rooms, according to NBC News. Journalist Glenn Greenwald had this to say about that report. Corporate journalists went to the Pentagon today to angrily demand they find ways to clamp down on secrets and ensure that no more leaks can happen. One specifically demanded they monitor Discord. Congrats to the journalists for getting less transparency and more monitoring. Inez, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely concerned with the way that intelligence agencies and spokespeople have. There was that report also out of NBC News that we are going to see a change in how intelligence agencies monitor, right, private chats on the internet, right? I don't think that could be good news for civil liberties whatsoever. Right now, you need probable cause in order to, basically check in on our group chats, right? You can't do that without actually having a probable cause. They can't spy on Americans without having that probable cause. And so that really worries me, that whole idea that we might have intelligence agencies pawing through all of the private chats on the internet, allegedly looking for leaked documents, but also just reading what Americans are saying to each other.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of terrifying. Any kind of Big Brother style surveillance on Americans is scary. However, I will say that there are people who would argue, for example, Peyton Gendron, who shared on Discord that he was planning to target and kill black people, and then he went and actually did it in Buffalo by killing 10 people inside of that supermarket. And he shared that on Discord. And so the question is, how do we come to a place where we can actually catch people who are going to do the nation harm versus monitoring, wholesale all Americans? Is there a happy medium where we can stop like terror activity like what Gendron did and still, respect civil liberties?
Well, right now that distinction is the public-private, right? Obviously, social media, public posts in social media, they're in the public. We know that there are both private and government, people monitoring all of that stuff. And again, if you have a probable cause, right, if you have some concrete reason to believe that, for example, there are leaked national security documents in a Discord chat, I think that most Americans would reasonably say, okay, we know that this is not good, that we have mass leaks out of the Pentagon, despite the fact that this is just showing the American people the truth of what our government is actually doing and thinking about very important foreign policy matters. But in any case, there is the question here, how did this 21-year-old guardsman get a hold of this? And so far, the reporting as of this morning is that these documents were in a quote-unquote secure facility. but that he was able to walk in and out of there and just take the documents, fold them up, and put them in his pocket. So that implicates their security. I don't know. I'm not really happy about losing my right to chat privately with my friends because they can't better secure national security documents.
No, I agree. There's definitely a hole there that needs to be filled. Apparently, he was trained. He had several certifications. We're not really certain, from what I've seen, not really certain whether it was in his capacity as a guardsman that he had access to the documents, or whether he, because he works in IT, much like Edward Snowden and others, that he was able to gain access through that, and he had these certifications that, made him qualified to actually, be around these documents. That's not really clear. I think that there is, on the one end, when it comes to Teixeira, I have some feelings of sympathy for him. And part of that is because you see this young kid who's gotten himself into something that he is completely not prepared for. He is going to be, we saw what happened with Chelsea Manning getting 35 years. She only served 7, but she still served a lot of time in prison. Reality winner, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange. But I do think that there are some key differences here between those cases and the case of Teixeira. Julian Assange, I would argue, was working in the capacity of a journalist. And then you had Edward Snowden and these other people, which I have mixed feelings about some of them, but who did this. They could certainly argue they were doing this for the public good. They were trying to make the public aware of what was going on. This kid was sharing it on Discord with his buddies. So you can't argue that he was doing this, for the public good so that the public had knowledge. He wasn't sending this to WikiLeaks or to The Intercept or to Glenn Greenwald. He was literally like, hey guys, take a look at this. And it was a bunch of teenagers on Discord. And I think that doesn't bode well for him, at least in my opinion. So I have kind of these mixed feelings about, he was sharing it, his group he called Thug Shaker Central, like that was the name of it, So I have these kind of mixed feelings about this, because if you're sharing it because you're like, whoa, Americans need to know this, and I think you qualify as a whistleblower, and I think Julian Assange qualifies as a journalist, and he has certain protections because of that. He should be afforded those.
I'm not sure his motivation. I'm not really concerned about his motivation, except in the case, like, if you are acting on behalf of a hostile foreign nation, that puts it into a different category, right? But the fact that this guy's motivations, at least according to his gaming buddies, were more or less, to buy clout on his Discord chat. He's like, yeah, look, guys, I'm really, and also apparently to show what a war really looks like behind the scenes. He was trying to show them that. But, I'm not sure his motivations matter so much. I do think that these leaks are substantively different in that actually what is contained in them so far, and there's still reporting coming out, and really legacy media outlets have been extremely slow to actually report on the very, very important substance in these leaks, right? And really have sort of done more reporting on catching the leaker. They were out in front of the FBI and catching the leaker, right? Than they were interested in the substance of what this is. But I really there's no even claim from intelligence services, from Joe Biden in his statements, that, for example, the identities of American assets are compromised or anything direct like that. What is at stake are relationships with other intelligence services and allies and foes, and the embarrassment of the government. I don't think that that's the same kind of leak. Right. I think that actually is information that Americans, have some claim to have a right to know. I think you're addressing a lot of this, but I do want to know, like, how do you think that this compares to Ed Snowden? Like, how do you compare that? If you're saying that the motivation doesn't matter, and because he wasn't sharing it with a hostile nation, how would you compare it to Edward Snowden? No, I think if you have a motivation where you are working, and I'm not actually saying this about Edward Snowden, but just generally, if you are actively spying for a foreign country and releasing information on behalf of a foreign country, that's one category of these kinds of leaks. I think Snowden is somewhere in the middle, where it gets picked up and used and there's communication to some extent but with foreign powers. This is, as you said, this is a kid leaking into a chat. I think actually this implicates more the stuff that I said originally about, how many people have access to these top security documents? What are the procedures? And it's funny because we know the federal government overclassifies everything, but this stuff is stuff that should have legitimately should have had a very high security clearance, and yet apparently it's very easy to walk into one of these facilities, pick it up, fold it, and put it in your pocket. I think that's probably to the extent that we should be talking about the leaker at all, as opposed to the information that's actually in this leak. I think it's that. We're incompetent, clearly, because this shouldn't have happened.
A lot of what's come out is, from what I've seen, again, and I'm sure they're not sharing everything in the media, but a lot of it seems like it was largely known already. Like, Ukraine needs more weapons, they're fighting to a stalemate, and this could last at least the rest of the year. I think a lot of that was already known. I think the other thing that we have to remember about the leaker himself is the fact that he knew the consequences. He was trained and had the background to understand that this was a serious issue. At the same time, again, I have some kind of sympathy or empathy with him because he's 21 years old. And I think he was trying to impress his friends and say, hey, I have access to these kinds of documents. He wasn't, trying to influence anything in the world other than making his friends be like, wow, this guy's big time. But all right, we'll keep you all updated on this and all that develops. More Rising after this.